Welcome back to Level Construction. In this video, Logan is going to continue the process of adding static meshes into our level. Logan?
Alright, let's now focus on this other room to the right here, this big slime pit room. The first thing that I want to add to this room is a series of catwalks. The first series that matches the height of this door. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin with one of the straight pieces that we already have. I'm going to start with this piece and duplicate it and move it over and align it to the door. So we can Alt-drag to duplicate this piece, kind of centered up on the door in the top view. Maybe move over a little bit and make sure that that's lining up. So we still have the same kind of indentation down to the floor, so that's good. Now we're going to have the basic layout is going to have the straight piece, a T-junction in the middle, and then another straight piece on the edge. And the scales will probably have to be adjusted, so I'm going to start by bringing this back down to a scale of 1. And then we can Alt-drag to duplicate to the other side, though I'm going to kind of leave it floating in space for a minute so we can align it to a different mesh. As a matter of fact, I need to load that mesh in now, so let me bring the static mesh browser back up, and let's scroll down. As a matter of fact, I think we'll need to swap over to LT floors. We need to grab another walkway piece. This time what we're looking for is a T-junction. We'll try to put a T-junction in between excuse me, some of these meshes. So what I'm going to grab is SM Walk Pipe 07. And we can drop that in here. I'll try to set it to the same height, so I'll grab one of the existing meshes for a position, and we'll drop that in. And it's looking really good on height there, so let's grab rotation and swing it around 180 degrees. And we'll drop this in place here. Now what I'm looking for with this mesh is to have the very center of the mesh centered in on this room, this 1024 room. And it looks like it's centered there. Now, I'm trying to think, this wall, just remembering back to the construction of this level, this should be 1024 units. And I want this centered up on it, which looks correct. The only problem is we're not actually getting 1024 units out of this room. This wall on the far side is placed on the inside of these brushes. That means if we were to measure, we'd probably have only 992 units, which means that we wouldn't be able to center things up. So to correct this, the easiest way we could do is we could take this wall and just slide it out.
Sounds good.
The corners are still touching.
Yep.
That's a very quick edit. We can rebuild geometry, make sure we're looking at the right result. And that way, we have a full 1024 units. And that way, placing this one in the center will work very nicely once we start having more decorational meshes placed in the corners.
Okay.
So, now I've got that lined up. It looks like, with this T-junction centered in the room, a scale of 1 was working perfectly over on this side. Now, to finish off the right side, I need another doorway, because this catwalk connects to a doorway on the far side of the wall. So let me grab my existing doorway and duplicate it down to the other side of the room. So we'll drag and center it up. We've got this wall in the correct place now, so I can tell where the doorway itself needs to be placed. And then we can center up this walkway to properly fit that space. And amazingly, it looks like a scale of 1 is going to work rather nicely for us there. So that worked out quite well. That has the top section of catwalk. There's going to be a bottom section that spans the slime pit, but this section on the bottom is going to be highly dependent on wherever the lift goes out to the side. And before I know where the lift will be positioned, I need its support meshes behind it. So what I want to do now is spend some time in this far corner and add some of the structural meshes, the supports and the I-beams that are going to reside behind the elevator. So let me bring the static mesh browser back up, and let me hunt down that one, the one, I guess you could say, framing piece.
Okay.
That piece, I believe, is going to be located in the LT Deco package, so let me load that in. Let's see, we've got LT Deco. If we open that up, let's see what we have available. We should have some kind of framing pieces. Let's scroll up a little to the top. We've got frame 01B. This should be a quarter circle frame. So I'll select this mesh and let's add it in. Let me see. I might just add it to the floor and build from the floor up. So we can go add an actor, static mesh, and there we go. It's a quarter circle piece, but it's far too large to fit in. What I really want to see is actually 2 semicircles. So I want 4 of these to fit into place. And that means I'm going to need to scale this down probably by a quarter, it seems. Let me move this in and get an idea of the length. I want to measure it end to end. So looking at this side, let's see. It looks like the pivot is aligned onto this edge, so if I measure from this side over to the pivot, I should be able to get an idea of exactly how wide this is. So it looks like we've got about 768 across. And I want to fit that into, let's see, that divided by 4. I want to fit 4 times across. So let's see, divided by 2. Let's bring up the trusty calculator. If we wanted 768 to be fit in here 4 times, that'd be 192 apiece. 192 divided by 768 is going to be 0.25 for each of these pieces. Let me think. You know, a more accurate calculation might be that I want these to fit into 512. Let's see. Oh, I see what it is. If we move this over to the side, the idea is that this edge isn't going to be floating out in space here. It's going to be aligned to the side. And to make sure that that's correct, I'm going to move the view over here, where I can see that that's lining up. So I want that to reach to 512. So if we take 768 divided by 512 gives us 1.5. Anyway, you can divide it that
Go the other way, yeah.
Divided by 768 gives us 0.6. Let me try plugging that in.
Sure.
We'll take the entire scale of the item, place in 0.67.
Push that on back over.
Oh, I see what's happening. I actually need to divide that by 2. If I duplicate now, let me switch to rotation for just a minute. Hold Alt and duplicate, and the position of the pivot on that mesh is convenient because you can duplicate and get a semicircle or even full circle result.
Mm-hmm.
Now that is exactly twice as large as I want it to be. I want to fit 2 of these in here instead of just 1. So we actually need half of this. So we could divide this down by 2 and we get 0.3. So let's grab both of these meshes now. Scale them down by 0.33, whatever it needs to do to fit that in. And now if I move this so it's just inside the wall, and I move it over to the side so it just lines up with the other wall, now we should have just enough room to fit 2 of them. So let me hold both of them, shift drag over, and we see that that wall is now lining up, and these aligned. They're not perfectly aligned on the edge, but we're going to add a support I-beam to the front of these anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But that does indeed fit 2 of those into the space, so that gives our room for the 2 generators to be placed in these 2 semicircular areas.
Okay.
I'm going to switch now to a front view so that I can align these up, because the idea is that we have kind of a mesh wall built out of these. So let me get all of the meshes selected, and then we can start duplicating. So I'm going to hold Alt, drag up, but a grid size, let's see. I think that looks pretty good. We can try to align it vertically, but these pieces don't fit directly into these bottom ones, so I'm going to leave it just like that.
Okay.
There'll be a little gap between them, but the idea is that this kind of creates a mesh effect all the way up. So let's hold Alt and duplicate again. And then we could grab all 3 of these, really all of them, and then hold Alt and duplicate a copy up once again. Maybe duplicate 1 more copy, though we'll probably have to delete a few. Oh, maybe not. Yeah, we can leave the top ones. Though, let's see. I don't know, I kind of like that ring look to the top.
Alright.
I mean, we could shift it a little bit so that this aligns perfectly to the top and leave a little bit off on the bottom. Not absolutely necessary. I mean, with that, I almost kind of like the way that looks on the top.
Yeah, I'll say it's your call, but I like the way it looks.
I'll leave it like that. It would be easy to adjust later, but I don't think it's going to matter. The idea is to have a nice mesh-looking support frame behind the elevator.
Right.
And we've got that going here. Now what I want to do is to find an I-beam mesh to kind of fill in the front face, because just looking at the texturing on these meshes, it really looks like the front faces were not intended to be shown.
Right.
So what we're going to do is to fill those in with a kind of I-beam support mesh. And that mesh is over in the HU supports package. So let's load in HU supports and scroll over a little bit. HU, maybe a little bit more. And there's HU underscore supports. We'll load this package in. And now we'll look for an I-beam mesh to fill in the front. Let's see, we've got actually a few different ones. Let's grab the one that's I-beam A underscore 256. And to add this in, let me start at the very bottom on the floor. And let's add in our new static mesh and move this over. We might need to, oh, did I add 2 of them? I think I did. And delete one of those, and
are there more than 2?
I added a lot of them somehow. And let's see, I think I'll take the scale up to 2 on those so that they more nicely fill in the area in front of these meshes. And then we'll duplicate one to the other side as well. So there we've got the nice kind of mesh support look to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll take both of these now, and we can duplicate them up. Let me see which view would work best. Probably a side view. So we can alt-drag these up, and very hard to tell exactly where they should be. So momentarily I'll grab all the I-beams, hide everything else just so that I can grab these top ones and make sure that they're aligned properly and snapping
nice
right there. So let's show everything again, and I kind of want these aligned so that this little bracket looking piece between them is on the same level as these meshes. And that'll be a little bit tricky to do until we've got the elevator in place, but just kind of eyeballing it from the side, it looks like they could move up a little bit. So if we took them up, maybe, let me scroll on a little bit to get some accurate dragging, just maybe 16 units up. I think that looks pretty close to this edge going to those brackets.
Okay.
Another nice thing that does is it aligns the brackets to the ceiling as well. So I think that's looking good for the centerpiece. Now if we look over on the sides, we've still got more of that open face mesh. So I could take some of these and duplicate them over. As a matter of fact, I want both. So we'll grab both of those, duplicate them, and move them over. So Alt-Drag, align these up here. Move them over just a little bit more so that they center. And for this one, I'm going to drop my drag grid. Let me go to View and set the drag grid down to 8. That way I can kind of center it up and make it look a little bit nicer. It does mean the mesh will kind of fall maybe halfway out of the level, but it looks nice.
But it's not the first one, so yeah, it's no worries.
So that's looking good on that side. Let me duplicate it over to the other side as well. And zoom in just a little bit to get some accurate placement. So we have an effect kind of like that.
Cool.
Aligning nicely. Kind of stepping into the floor a little bit, but I think the wall we're going to build here will cover it up.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, that's got some nice supports in the background. Knowing these supports means we can add in the mesh for the lift. As a matter of fact, we'll add the mesh as an interpolation actor. But knowing that will give us the ability to put in some lift supports as well as that final bottom walkway. So what I want to do now is find the package that contains a lift mesh. And I think the LT Floors package actually has a nice simple lift. So if we go back to LT Floors and scroll around, and there we go. There's Lift 01 because I think it has some nice kind of guard railings in it. So we'll grab LT Floors, the SM Lift 01 mesh, and I'll add this in. I'll probably just start at the floor because it'll be easier to find. Now when I add this mesh in, I'm going to add it as an interp actor instead of as a static mesh. We won't worry about animating it just yet, but having an interp actor will do 2 things. One, it'll be a different color, so it'll be very easy to see. And 2, when we go to make it work, when we go to hook up all the animation, it will already be an interpolation actor.
Right.
So let's add that in, and let's take a look at which way it's facing. The lift has this one railing on the back, and I want that aligned to the mesh, so that makes the back of the lift. So let me rotate that around 90 degrees, right to about there. And with its rotation known, I can slide it in so that it just fits, and I might need to drop the drag grid just a little bit more. Let me go to View, grab my drag grid, and set it to 4. And with 4, I can snap it very close to the I-beams, because any more would put it flush up against them. But I think that's looking pretty good. So with that now, I'm going to move it up a little bit. I'll worry about aligning it to the walkway once I have more of the walkway pieces in place. But at the moment, really anywhere would work, because the next series of pieces I want to add are the actual lift supports, some columns that I can kind of fit into these notches on the side of the lift. So let me go back to the static mesh browser for a bit, and let me find some good pillars. Looking through here, I think I need to load in a new package now because I want to look for some pillars that exist in the LT support package, or LT supports. So let's scroll over, there's LT support.
Okay.
Let's load that in. And you give it just a minute to load. Now looking through here, let's see if there's some good pillars. Because I'm kind of looking for a nice rounded pillar. So looking through here, actually it might be closer to the top. LT supports, let's see. I think the name contained, was it round pillar or org pillar? Oh, maybe it was one of the pipes ones. Hang on. It might actually be an LT deco. LT support is for later, I think. LT deco. There's some pipes already. There we go. Skew pipe. That's what I was looking for. Okay, so it's an LT deco. The mesh I was looking for was skew pipe 01. So back into the level. Let's add one of those pipes. We can add it really anywhere works. I'm going to start with the floor though, so we get good alignment. Now, the first thing we notice is that the mesh by default is facing the wrong way, so let's rotate it to be standing up instead of on the floor, so about 90 degrees facing up now. And the next thing we notice is that the mesh is way too large. It doesn't fit into those grooves at all. Now, I don't want to mess around with the full draw scale, because it's important that the mesh be snappable in a front view, so that the next mesh, if we look at the grid line it lays on, to have it lie on a nice grid line. So I want to leave the scale in Z alone. So I'm going to handle scaling in just X and Y in draw scale. So what I want to do is find a good draw scale that makes this kind of fit into those notches. We can start off maybe in X and bring this down to maybe 0.325. And that actually, okay, I rotated it, so that means that X is going to be Z for this mesh. So X, just to get an idea of what the coordinates are doing, let me switch to local coordinates for a moment. And there we can see that X is actually up and down because of the way this mesh is rotated. So to squash it in a little bit, we need to take maybe, let's start with maybe Z. Make that 0.325. And then maybe take Y and set that to 0.3125. Maybe even less than that, maybe just 0.3. Maybe even 0.25. Maybe 257. Just trying to find a nice kind of oblong shape to fit that in. I'll move this in a little bit. And let me switch the axes back to world. And let me also drop the drag grid. Let's go to view, turn the drag grid, let's drop down to 2. And it's still not quite enough accuracy, so let me drop the drag grid all the way down to 1. And there we go. Just get an idea of what this is looking like, see if I like the way it's turning out. I kind of don't like how it's stretching so much up and down. So what I might do is, I know I didn't want to adjust Z necessarily, but if I did something very accurate, like maybe a scale of 0.5, actually that's all of it. Just Z, which is actually X, which would be 0.5. I think that kind of looks better. Maybe even 0.25. Let me turn, let's see. 0.25. Because that actually kind of looks better. It's a little bit squashed. But I mean, beyond that, I'm going to have to start changing the drag grid. Let me get an idea what 16 will look like. Because that actually snaps to 16 units. So I'm going to find something that's maybe, would be a few units higher. Now I'm just getting kind of picky, but maybe 196, and what was it originally? The original size of this was, it's 256, so half would be 128. I know I didn't want half, that was still stretched. So let's do 96. 96 divided by 256 would give 0.375. 0.375. And that gives us a very nice grid unit we can snap to. And gives us a nice compromise on the size of the mesh as well. So I kind of like that. So let's see. Before I duplicate them up, let me get the rest of the final 3 placed around the lift. And for that, I'm going to need the drag grid back down to small size, all the way back down to 1. And I'm almost thinking of scaling it and making it just a little bit more narrow, because I like that for positioning on the sides, but I don't want to move it out too much. Well, maybe moving it out's easier. Let me think. I'm going to switch to local for just a second. If we take our Y, 0.27, maybe 0.25. Yeah, I kind of like that better. We'll go with 0.25. And the drag grid's set to 1, so we should be able to align the others. So I'll duplicate this one now and get it to fit directly into the other notch on the other side. And for some reason on this lift, these notches on the inside can be moved in just a little bit. But that looks like it's just the design of that static mesh.
Mm-hmm.
So we could take both of these now, drag them to the other side, and line them up. This one's lining up nicely. This one will need to be moved out just 1 unit, and that has all 4 of them placed. Now
is it just 1 unit for the one on
this side?
On the other one, straight across to the right?
Yes. Are you seeing, can this one go in one?
Yeah, there we go.
Actually, it can, yeah.
There we go.
That'll line it up a little bit nicer. There we go. Maybe they were all the same to begin with. They might have been. At any rate, they're aligned now, so I'm going to grab all of them, grab a more convenient drag grid of 16, and then begin to duplicate them.
Mm-hmm.
So Alt drag 2 of them, Control select all 4, probably all 8 of those, and then Alt drag once again, and we'll just keep duplicating this set until we reach the desired height. I think that was right. It's getting kind of hard to tell some of the snapping, but at this rate, 16 units is a large snap, so we can see that they're aligning in perspective. And we're very near the top of the level now, so I can probably take just the very top 4 now and duplicate them up to there. And now we have support beams for our lift.
Nice.
So we have not only the support beams but the lift itself, and that means we now know the distance from our catwalks over to our lift, so we know exactly how to align the different pieces. And I'm going to begin with the piece that goes from the top of the lift out to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab one of the straight catwalk pieces and rotate, or hold Alt and rotate, so we'll duplicate across 90 degrees and then move it into place here, so we can get an idea of exactly where it should be aligned to. And it looks like, let me do a measurement to see how much we need to scale it. We need to actually hit about 192 goes too far. 176 looks good. That'll leave just a small gap for the lift. So bringing up a calculator, if we take 176 divided by 256 gives us a scale of 0.6875. So let's plug that in to draw scale Y. And if we zoom in, that gives us a very nice gap for the edge of the lift. So now we could grab the lift itself and line it up and see what that's looking like. So if we move it up, maybe a little bit more. There, we've got a very nice transition over to the lift. A very small gap, so that's looking really nice. Let's see. A few things we can do with the lift here. I want to add some guardrails to the side. As a matter of fact, it might not be a bad idea to add some guardrails to these pieces as well, because I want to add guardrails also to the side of this lift so people can't get on the lift and then just walk off the side into the slime below. So let's fill out a few guardrails before we finish the other catwalk. Let me grab, let's see what would be most convenient. Probably this guardrail that has the supports on both sides. Let me Alt drag and duplicate that over to the first walkway piece here on the side. Let's see how that's aligning. Let me move the camera over here. And it would be aligning really well on this side. Actually, I don't even think I'm going to put guardrails on this side because we've got that wall right there. So what I'll do is maybe just rotate it 180 degrees, swing it around, and then line it up to the catwalk, which is looking good on that side and also looking good on this side. And we could make it a little longer if we needed to, but on this side, that should be alright. Let's duplicate it over here. So now we have guardrails on both of those. We'll leave these sides open off of this center walkway because the idea is that directly below here we have another catwalk that matches the lift. So we'll leave this open since if you jump off the edge you'll just jump down to the new catwalk at the bottom. But one thing I can do now with these lift pieces in place is put guardrails along the sides of the lift. So I could duplicate and drag these down into place, maybe rotate 90 degrees, something like that. Slide these into place so that they fit nicely, but they're a little bit too long. So let's take the draw scale down, maybe by about half, so that they fit fairly well up to the edge of the lift. So that looks kind of nice. And then same for this one, we can duplicate across to the other side. And to make positioning, since it's scaled, I'm just going to draw scale. Let me switch to local for just a moment, because I don't remember which axis I need to scale on. If we just mirror an X, that should flip it around. And then I can still source the positioning point right here on the lift. But I should probably move it in just a little bit. Maybe like that. Okay. So there, from the lift, we have guardrails on both sides. And now I think we can move on to the catwalk, the lower catwalk that covers the slime fit. So let's see, what do I want to do for that? Let me begin with a few pieces. Since the catwalk needs to have a doorway, because there's going to be a wall that it needs to cut through, there needs to be a door on the other side, and there needs to be a walkway all the way across. So I could begin with pieces like the far doorway, some of these catwalk pieces, maybe even the T-joint, and this door. Actually, not the builder brush, but the door. And I could take all of these things and duplicate them. So I'll alt drag, pull them forward to a, at the moment, unknown amount. I'll worry about the exact alignment when I have the correct pieces in place. I do want to move it down in Z, though, so that the floor pieces match the floor here. And for the time being, I'm going to have this door piece set up so that some of the mesh pieces stick through it. We'll worry about getting a better platform set up for the doorway here in just a minute. Or maybe in a long minute, but still. We'll worry about that later. For the moment, we're trying to get this catwalk piece lined up. And what I'm going to do for the centerpiece here is I'm going to take these straight pieces off the side, and I'm going to kind of invert the way these were set up. Where the top walkway has one T-junction in the middle, instead I want the lower catwalk to have two T-junctions on the side and one straight piece in the middle. So what we'll do is we'll delete one of those straight pieces out. We'll move the T-junction over so that it aligns to the door, and then we can move the straight piece in closer to it, take the T-junction and duplicate it to the other side, maybe even align it to the other door. Then that would give us an amount of space we can scale to for making this center brush. And really, I'll worry about the alignment here in just a minute. So what we can do, since there's a lot of meshes in this area, I'll grab just the 3 walkway meshes, show only those meshes, and then you can move this out of the way so I can find the distance in between the two, which is apparently going to be a very short distance of 128. So let's set the scale down to 0.5 for this brush, slide it into place, something like that, and we can show everything again. And we've got the nice walkway working there. Now with this piece in place properly, we can compare it to the walkway above, because we know we aligned this piece to match the lift really well. So if we take only this piece and then the pieces below it, well, actually I'll grab more than just some of the pieces. I'll grab the entire lower walkway and both of the doors and then the one top piece and show only those actors. That way we can take this piece and figure out how far in we need to move everything below it, because the idea is that this edge match, and these edges seem to fall on grid points, so it should be easy to move them over. So what I could do is I could grab everything, but then Control deselect that top piece, and take this lower catwalk, slide it in, and there we have the edges matching very nicely.
Nice.
So that way if I bring everything back and look at the lift section, that's looking better. I could take the lift itself and move it down temporarily just to see what it's looking like if the lift was at the bottom. And we get that as an effect. So very nice, very small gap, very flush meeting. And that gives us our exact positioning for this second walkway now. Because if we scroll back, we can see that we've got kind of a larger side on this side, kind of a smaller side on this side. But it would have been impossible to gauge exactly where it should go until we had the lift in place. Alright, let me see. Is there anything else we need on the bottom? Well, I think we're going to have a doorway out on this wall. So what I could do is I could take one of these door meshes and duplicate it over. So let me scroll up to the top and Alt drag a doorway and then rotate that doorway 180 degrees. Then align the doorway so that it's centered up on the wall, making sure that it's centered on the center point of this room, which I could probably prove by grabbing the center point of the door, measuring over, and giving exactly 512. So we know we've got that positioned correctly. The position in Z should be correct because it was duplicated from this doorway. Now we just need a connecting piece to get across. Now it seems like a T-joint would be useful, but the problem is the T-joints are very large, and trying to squash a T-joint into this area just wouldn't fit. That's why we'd gone with this style of mesh. So what I'm going to do instead is steal one of these full walkways, one of the ones that's scaled to 1. As a matter of fact, this one's more convenient. I'm going to steal it and duplicate it over. Let me grab rotation and swing this around 90 degrees and move it into place. As a matter of fact, this is getting cluttered again, so let me grab just some convenient meshes, which I hope will help in alignment, and the mesh I'm working on. Show only those meshes, and then I can get a much better idea of where I need to center things. So we can move that into place, and we can also, measure the distance that we need here. So we can measure this across. That's 240 units, which the calculator will tell us that we need 240 divided by 56 gives a scale of 0.9375, which we could plug into draw scale, and then have a mesh that aligns just as we need it over here. Then we can bring everything back, and that gives our final walkway. So we've got a lower walkway, we can get onto the lift. We've got these pieces that go to nowhere, but the idea is that these areas are filled in by those generators, so it's kind of like an access point to the generator. Then over on this side we have another catwalk mesh, which matches up surprisingly well for not being a T-joint. Combined with this scaled in version over on this side, we get a kind of nice effect where we have a makeshift T-joint that leads to our final doorway. We have everything on the lower walkway positioned so that it matches up to the lift. And that's all I can think of for this second part. We've got the second room now greatly fleshed out. We've got all the structural meshes, we've got the walkways, we've got the lifts put in place, we've got the supports for the lift, and some of the background meshes. So I think that's everything we needed to get accomplished in this section.
Okay, well with that, that's going to wrap up this video. Thanks a lot.